So hello everybody, welcome today. Today we're going to have the Gifted and Talented end of year training. Glad to have all of you guys here today. My name is Kathy Anderson and I'm the Gifted Education Program Consultant for our state. And we're just going to go over just a few more things before we get started. So again, welcome. The purpose of getting together today is to go over how to clean up data and get ready to submit reports that are required by regulation. So I hope to walk you through that process today. And again, if you've got any questions, please be sure to submit those questions in a browser. Type in the URL app.gosoapbox.com and enter the event access code 113-840-773. And be sure to take breaks as you need them. Get up and get a drink or whatever you need to do during this presentation. Hopefully we'll finish up a little early and you can have some time back to yourself. That would be very nice. All right, these are today's topics. So I'm not going to be able to see you as I read my notes today, so I apologize for that. But today's topics are part one, GT data standards. I'm not going to go over all the standards, just a few updates to the standards and also just some important things to remind you about. Part two is going to be the data correction and cleanup section. In order to have good data, we've got to clean that data up. And then part three is the validation of student records. So we're going to talk about how to validate student records by looking at state and local data sets. And that will help our school report card data to be correct for analyzing and also for training purposes. And then part four is going to be the annual program evaluation. We'll talk about that. That's something that districts start to think about this time of year. And then also a quick overview of the directions for completing the summative evaluation. Here are some important dates to note. And again, this will be recorded and posted next week by the end of Friday of next week. May 31st, that's when data and record cleanup and correction should be completed. June 1st, the summative evaluation report and validations of records reports are due. June 31st is the last day to enter GT records that will count for data on the school report card. But don't forget that you can enter records anytime after June the 31st. They just won't count towards the school year. They have to be entered before July 1st because that is when Data Enterprise begins to collect that information for the school report card. There are 3 reports to complete for the end of the year. There's the 2022 student groups for the school report card validation. This report validates that GIA and the students identified for the subcategories for specific academic aptitude, which are language arts, math, science, and social studies, have all been correctly identified for the GT program since there are specific regulation criteria. The 2022 validation of GT records ensures all GT records are correct for the school report card. And then the summative evaluation from Section 9 of the regulation. The summative evaluation is a report of progress that must be submitted to KDE. And therefore, there is a short form for districts to complete regarding their GT programs and overall progress of GT students. So let's talk about the GT data standards, just the updates. Like I said before, we're not going to go through all the data standards. So since October, there have been some changes. In October, we deleted how to generate the Kentucky Gifted and Talented Detail Report. This was a report that was replaced by the QA Gifted and Talented Report. And so there's some directions now on how to generate that report. Also, we added a link to the Infinite Campus Gifted and Talented Kentucky. And that particular link tells you about all the different services and what those services are. Kind of gives you a definition, if you will, of Gifted and Talented in Kentucky. Section M is a transfer of GSSP and progress report section that's been added. So in case you didn't, if you're not using the Gifted Student Service Plan or progress report at Infinite Campus, I'd encourage you to do that. That's not something that you have to do, but it is, there are some good forms You can see those in the parent and student portal, and also those can transfer with the student from district to district. Section N, copying of a GSSP or progress report section has been added. There's directions there that tell you how to go about copying a GSSP or progress report if you need to do that. And then just recently, we also added a section, it shouldn't be section A, I don't think, that should be a different section. But there is a section that's been added on visual and performing arts evidence screenshots. So it came to our notice that there had been some evidences from the regulation that had been left out on the visual and performing arts evidence boxes in Infinite Campus, and so that evidence has been added. And then also we've updated directions for the military compact for those students who are children of military service personnel. The military compact says that we have to accept those students from out of state, and so they don't need to have 3 evidences, and we have updated the logic for that particular box so that you don't have to enter 3 evidences for that. So check out the directions for that when that has been posted to the new to our Gifted and Talented Resources page. Also, there's a new section O that talks about how to validate state and local data sections. And also to streamline our processes, I'm going to be adding information also about this data cleanup process that we're going through today so that I can make our end of year processes hopefully shorter and more streamlined for the following school year, for next school year. All right, next we're going to talk about part 2, which is data correction and cleanup. And so, like I said before, this is really necessary for correct data that can relate that leads to our reports and to our analysis. So first of all, you need some permissions to complete the end of year processes. You'll need the GT participation tool. That is where the GT record is housed. You need read and write rights to that. You may need the enrollment tab. That can be very helpful. Some districts are a little bit cautious about giving those rights to people sometimes, but it does really help, especially when you're looking for students and where they have transferred from previously. State published ad hoc filters. So your district may have created some ad hocs for you, and that's great, but we also have state ad hocs that will help you to clean up your data for the end of year reports. Data integrity tools. These are really important because you need these tools in order to compare state and local data sets for data cleanup. And then if you're not sure who your cases person is that might be able to help you with these rights, you can go to KDE's open house. There'll be a link there that you can click on and select the correct district, and you'll be able to find the person if you're not sure who that is in your district. So let's get started with some data correction. So once all your rights are secured, a process has been determined to work with your cases person if you need that person to help you. Record cleanup then begins. So of course you're going to log into IC and you're going to go down and look for state published ad hocs. These are the state published ad hocs that have been given to districts to use to help with their data cleanup. And as you can see, there's several there. And we're going to go over several of these to help especially new people to understand what they are doing as they are cleaning up their data for the end of the year. And if you go there and you don't see that you have any of these ad hoc filters, again, please check with your district cases contact to ensure that you've got all the rights that you need to be able to see these cleanup ad hocs. So let's begin with the general intellectual ability cleanup ad hoc. This helps you look for students who do not have the night stay on checked, or maybe do not have special considerations checked on their student record. So you want to make sure you're in the correct school year, and then you're going to select the student G&T invalid general intellectual ability filter. And then you want to click data export, and then you want to select the ad hoc for invalid general intellectual ability. And then you want to select eliminated values. This will put it into a spreadsheet form, which will make it easier to filter if you need to filter for any specific columns. And then once all your settings are selected, you just click export, and then the spreadsheet will appear in usually the bottom left-hand corner, and then you click on that and it opens up for full screen. So after clicking export, as I said, a spreadsheet will generate with any students in the district that have an invalid GIA entry. And so I know this may look kind of confusing, so let me see if I can explain this lovely screenshot here. So the blue check boxes are what have been checked for this student, and this student is coming up as an invalid entry. And as you can see, this student's got continuous progress data, behavioral checklist of inventories, and high performance on an intellectual assessment. So in order for a student to be a GIA student by regulation, they need to have the 9th STAY-9 checked. And so as you can see, this student doesn't have that checked. So maybe this student has been selected for special considerations. And so if that's true, then the special considerations box would need to be checked. And there might be a checklist of inventories for that. So logic is looking for these 3 things, and because these 3 boxes aren't checked, the student has generated onto your report. So for each student that's listed on the spreadsheet, search for that student in Infinite Campus. And once you find the student, proceed to their record, review the student's GT folder to see, what might be missing from the evidences that are marked. If the correct identification evidence is in the folder, select one of the evidences that applies and click Save. If you aren't sure why that student doesn't have that evidence and you don't see any evidence in that student's folder, then please reach out to me and we'll work together to correct that record. All right. If an assessment is not listed on the drop-down menu, contact the GT consultant to ensure the assessment meets the regulation criteria. So let's say that, the 9th STAY-9 wasn't checked, and so you've checked the 9th STAY-9 and you've looked at what assessment was used for the student. And if it's not on there, then please select Other. Before you click Other, though, if you're not sure that that's an assessment that meets the regulation criteria, feel free to contact me and we can talk about that. So once all the correct boxes have been checked, then you're going to click Save to save that record. Proceed through all the other records in the same manner. And once each record is completed, generate the report again to make sure there are no students listed on that report. All right, record cleanup for the specific academic aptitude, SAA records. This runs in the same manner as the GIA report that we just went through. Again, you want to select the current school year. You want to select student G&T invalid specific academic aptitude. You want to select ad hoc/data export. Then you want to ensure all the settings are checked as indicated on the diagram there. And then you want to click export. And again, this report's looking for records that do not have the 9th STAY-9 checked or don't have the special considerations checkbox checked. So after you click export, a spreadsheet's going to generate with any students for the district that have invalid specific academic aptitude entry. And students marked as SAA must have one of the following criteria indicated by the red arrows below in order to be a valid entry. So again, the student's got formal testing data, referrals, recommendations, parents, and a checklist of inventories. As you can see, the 9th STAY-9 is not checked. So again, you want to, search that student on the district IC campus. When the report is generated, you'll see over on the side of the GT codes. I don't believe it has like language arts or math. It just has the codes 04, 05, 06, 07. And so you'll want to look in that student's hard copy folder to determine, why the student doesn't have the 9th STAY-9 checked. And if they transfer from another district, please contact that other coordinator to find out, to send you that documentation and also to try to help you correct that record. And again, if the previous district doesn't have that documentation, please contact me to help you, with that. All right. Troubleshooting the invalid SAA report. And again, if an assessment's not offered on the drop-down menu, contact me to assure that the assessment meets the criteria. And then if it's not on the drop-down box, then you're going to select other. Then once all the correct boxes have been checked, you're going to click save and proceed up through all the student records for the district, completing this process for each student record. And then once a record is updated, you want to generate this report again to make sure there are no records that are generated for this report, that everything's cleaned up. All right. So the next report we're going to talk about is called the Invalid GT Category Report. And this is a report that shows students who are too young to be formally identified. So for example, you've got a second grade student, but for some reason they have a general intellectual ability record. So again, you want to select the current year. You want to select the student G&T invalid gifted category filter. You want to select ad hoc, then data export, then select delimited values or CDS. Ensure that all the settings are completed as indicated by the red arrows, and then click export. So after you click export, a spreadsheet's going to generate with any students that have an invalid gifted category. If it comes up and you don't have any kids that are on that spreadsheet, that's great. Make sure you're in the right year, of course. Make sure you've got 2021, 2022 selected. But if you don't have any students, then you've got a clean report. There's no errors. So in order to have a formally identified GT student, just remember a student needs to be in grades 4 through 12. And again, students that are on this report are in currently grades K through 3. In order to correct these records, the student's invalid record should be changed to primary talent pool, which is category 12. This next report is called the Invalid Primary Talent Pool Ad Hoc Report, and this lists students who are too old to be in primary talent pool. So don't forget also when you're creating a new PTP record to pre-end date the record. Pre-end dating can save you some time so that you don't have to go back at the end of 3rd grade and end date the record. So again, for this report, these students are too old to be in primary talent pool. And so using the SSIDs, you want to go back in and look at that student's record, and on the record, there's a place to end date the record. So go back and look and see when that student was in 3rd grade and just end date that with like June the 30th, 2019 or whatever, wherever the student was in 3rd grade. Then when all the students have been corrected, generate the report again to make sure there's no more records to be corrected. This is something that's kind of come to our attention back in the fall. Sometimes when you're correcting a record, you'll see that there's only 2 evidences in the evidence box at the bottom of the record. And you may wonder, well, why that is. So back in August of 2020, the other checkbox was deleted from the GT record to make way for the special considerations checkbox that we believed would give us better data. And so some of the records that use the other checkbox, it's in the background, but you just can't see it. And so it looks like that there are only two checkboxes. So what you need to do is just look in that student's folder to see if that student might have been a special consideration student, and then correct that missing evidence for the student, and then click save. So once all your general intellectual ability, specific academic aptitude, and primary talent pool data is cleaned up and complete, you can then complete and submit the student groups for school report card validation report. And this will be a Google form that you'll complete where you're just initialing that you have cleaned up all of this data for the school report card. And like I said before, these will all be Google forms, and I'll send you copies of these so that you can look at them before you complete the data, because once you start entering the data, you can't complete it and come back to it. All right, part 3, validation of student records. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. All right. Trying to turn off my phone there. Okay, so part 3 is the validation of student records. So in order to ensure the data is correct for the student report card, we must validate that records are correct between state and local data sets. I know you may be thinking to yourself, well, don't they sync? Well, yes, they do, but sometimes there are things that don't sync. For example, when a student moves to your district, you must import that record. If for some reason the enrollment personnel or who was ever in charge of importing, new student records didn't import the GT record, you may be missing that record. Those records don't automatically import. So we also use this process to check for transfer students, like I said, during this year. You could work with your cases contact to create an ad hoc in your district that looks for transfer students, because if you're a rather large district, trying to look through rows and rows of data for records that don't compare, that don't match, that might be difficult. So get with someone who's good with spreadsheets to help you look for the inconsistencies, the discrepancies between the two spreadsheets. And also, later on, this is also a good process to make sure you're not missing any students in your district. And you could create, like I said before, an ad hoc with your cases contact that helps you make a list of all the transfer students in your district so that you can ensure you're not missing any GT students during the year. So getting started, before completing the validation of GT records, review the Google form so that you can see what you're going to kind of be looking for. And I've kind of given you a screenshot there where it's going to ask you for, creativity records for the state report and also creativities of records for the district report. And so these should both be the same number. And if not, we'll go through what you do to correct that. And like I said before, we're going to compare the data from the state and local spreadsheets. So to ensure all the GT data is correct for the program data in the school report card, you've got to review that your information is correct. And again, we're going to compare state and local data sets. And if there are any missing records, we're going to talk about how to correct those. And then once the data is correct, the GT coordinator is going to complete the validation of GT records report using the Google link form. So these are the steps for validation. Of course, you're going to log into Infinite Campus. You're going to scroll down towards the bottom of the index and click Data Integrity Tools. You're going to select Validation. And then once you do that, you're going to select Reports. Then you're going to select Definition Group Extract. I believe there were some issues with this last year about the definition group. So if you have some issues with that, please contact your cases contact. They may need to set up some rights for you or set up a group for you, a GT group for you. If they're not sure what to do, please contact me and we'll work with you to figure out what's going on there. You will complete 2 extracts using this tool, as I said, the state data set and a local data set. So when you generate the district edition in your district, the report in your district, it's going to, if you decide you want to do the state report first, well, there's going to be two reports. So, and you can select those here in the middle of your screen. Underneath HTML, you'll see report data source, and on this screen, you see we're going to do the local data set first. And so you just click that, and then it will click Generate Report, and it's going to generate your local data set of all the records in your district. All right, so you're going to select these from the drop-down boxes: Gifted and Talented Group, Report Format CBS, and then the state data set when you do the state data set. And after making your selections, you're going to click Generate Report. Now this one may take a little longer to generate because it's data that's coming from a different network. So when you generate the report, the district edition sends a request to the state edition for a state report of the data in your district. And then, like I said, the report is sent back to the district. Please check back periodically. You'll see right now that it's in a queue. And then once it's generated that report, you'll see it says completed, get the report. So once complete, select Get the Report under the Download column. And then once you've generated the state data set, you should save it as a spreadsheet file. And also you want to save your district file as well. You don't necessarily have to call it what I've stated here on the slide. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Just remember to save it to a safe space. And it might be a good idea to save it maybe up on your network to a secure place, because you've got student data, and this is private data that you wouldn't want to have on your hard drive. This will give you a list of all the students in your district that are currently identified for gifted and talented services in the state edition. And this is some more directions about how to generate the local data set. And then once it's been generated, you want to save that, like I said, to a secure location. Then next comes the comparing of your state and local data sets. So you're going to have two different spreadsheets, and you'll see here in this column here that Susie has been identified for several different categories in the gifted program. And so Susie has 2, 4, 6, and 8. And I can't remember exactly what all of these different categories are. I think that 2 is general intellectual ability, and 4 maybe language arts or math, and then science and social studies. But anyway, so she's got several different categories here. And so you'll see this in the state side. So you want to see that Susie also has local records for Susie that are the same. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio type deal. So if you see that you've got records that appear in the district, but not on the state, you may need to run a manual sync at the district level. So talk to your cases person about that. And you want to check to ensure that all the records for each student are present. Now, like I said, if you see any discrepancy, you want to note those. And then if possible, you may need to try to transfer any missing records, but we're going to talk about that some more in a second. All right, so completing the validation process. So once you've completed the validation process and corrected any errors, if the lists match, then you're going to complete the Google form, GT record validations report by June the 1st. If the lists are different, then we're going to utilize some troubleshooting steps. And if the steps don't correct the problem, then please feel free to contact me for assistance to help you with those next steps in troubleshooting. So we've got 3 different scenarios we're going to talk about that may come up as you're validating student records. So scenario 1, the student appears on the state but not the district list and has an end date. So this probably means the student has moved, and that student was end dated by your district. And so you just want to make a note of the discrepancy on the last response of the state validation of GT records verification form. There'll be a question for that where you can note why there's a discrepancy there, because I'll go through and be looking for any discrepancies. And so for example, you might say SSID number 234567 appears on the state list but not the district list. The student moved out of the district on November the 2nd, 22, and the date there. That's why there's a discrepancy there, because the student moved. The second scenario might be that the student appears on the state list but not the district list and does not have an end date. So you want to look at the child's record in Infinite Campus, and if the student does not have a GT record for the district, you want to attempt to import the record using the IC Student Record Transfer State Data Standard. So that means that you need to know where the student was before. And if you're not sure where the student was before, please contact me and I can help you with that, because I can see where all the enrollments for the state for the students. So once you've done that and you've located where the student is and you've sent a records transfer, then you should get that student's record to import to your district. And you'll go through the process there. Please look through the data standard to see what that process looks like. I'm not going to go through all of that. But you do have to click save to get that record to show up in the participation tool. And then, of course, you're going to want to reach out to the district, also the GTC there, and ask for those hard copies of the student's documentation and for them to send those to you. Scenario 3 is where the student appears on the district list, but not on the state list. And so this is usually a syncing issue. So you want to ask your cases person to manually sync the student's record to the state, and then you want to run the state list again to ensure the student is on the list. If the student's not on the list, then please contact me and we'll work together to figure out what's going on. All right. So the process for student records when they're missing evidence. You've got a new student in your district and they're missing evidence. So for any new students that are imported, like I said, you want to contact the previous district for their GT student records. If you're not sure of the student's previous district, contact me and I'll help you with that. Also, if you know where the student has been and you're not sure who the GT coordinator is for the district, if you go to KDE's open house directory, it lists all the personnel for the district, and the GT coordinator is usually listed there, and you can reach out to them by finding out who that is. And like I said, if the previous district doesn't have the record, then the district needs to begin to collect that identification documentation for the student. This is something that may be new for some of you guys, but this is something that needs to be done because according to the regulations, sections 9, 11, and 12, students who qualify for primary talent pool or for grades 4 through 12, they must meet regulation criteria. And so the student is now enrolled in your district and therefore is your responsibility. So if you have any issues, collecting that data, please reach out to me. If you're not sure about what to do, about how to collect that documentation for that student that's new, that the prior district didn't have documentation for, please feel free to reach out to me and talk to me about that. All right, so you want to complete the validation of GT records when your state and local records have been compared and notes have been taken on those students who had end dates to include on the report, and missing student records have been imported and requests sent to previous districts and copies of identification document and requested copies of identification documentation, GSSPs, and progress reports. And then for the report, you're going to need unduplicated numbers for each of the gifted categories and also a total unduplicated count of gifted students for the district. All right, part 4, this is the annual program evaluation. So this is the time of year to start thinking about collecting data for the annual program evaluation. Collecting this data could help your program for the next school year, especially if it's shared with school and district leadership. So per 704 KR 3:285, Section 5, the district must create policies and procedures to ensure a program evaluation is conducted annually and addresses the following items: overall student progress, student, parent, and faculty attitudes towards the program, community involvement, cost effectiveness, the incorporation of gifted education into the regular school program, overall quality of instruction and program personnel credentials, and future program and directions and modifications. So let's go over these because sometimes people are unsure of what they should be collecting or what these different items are. All right, so overall student progress. The district will need to review progress reports from the school year for the summative evaluation, and you can look at other data besides your progress reports. If you want to look at diagnostic data or other types of data that your school collects, that is fine. But you will need to, for the summative evaluation, answer some questions about different levels of groups. So you'll need to break that data down into groups of progress by looking at grades 4 and 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. Districts will need to know, did most of the students in these grade levels meet, not meet, or exceed according to the progress reports, or whatever data that you decide to collect and and give an overall report to the KDE about the students in these levels. So once the progress is analyzed, then the district could plan next steps and could share this information. Well, according to the regulation, it must be shared for district and instructional planning. And we'll talk about that some more in a minute. But don't forget to document this process by saving, things like agendas, meeting notes, any other resources that will document, that you collected overall student progress. All right, student, parent, and faculty attitudes toward the program. So using the district procedures to collect feedback from the students and parents and faculty about the GT program. So you want to analyze the feedback to assess next steps for your program. Of course, that's going to go into your future program and modification. That's towards the end of those criteria that you saw earlier. If in the past, the district hasn't received much feedback, you might want to try reaching out to someone in the stakeholder, one of the stakeholders in the group, to ask how this process might be improved. You might try multiple ways to survey stakeholders. This might include a parent meeting where survey is given and participants take the survey at the meeting. If you've got surveys, please remember to save those and then think about, analyze the feedback that you get. It doesn't necessarily have to be a survey. You may be having a meeting with your staff and collecting feedback in that manner, but you do need to somehow or another collect data about the attitudes of those three stakeholder groups for your annual program evaluation. And then you want to make sure that you are documenting that. And of course, what have you taken away from that feedback to help your program for the next school year? Community involvement. So what is community involvement? Well, unfortunately, it's not defined in our regulation, but I would suggest that community involvement could be defined as how the GT program is involved in your community and how the community is a part of your GT program. For the program evaluation, there could be a discussion with notes taken and saved about what happened in your community involvement this past school year. Please save these notes and documents. You might have flyers or invitations or emails, about where you've invited people to come and speak or those types of things. But please save any kind of artifacts that you have to document community involvement for your program evaluation. Cost effectiveness. This is another item which should be addressed for the program evaluation. For this item, it could be good to schedule some time with the finance administrator to get a copy of the GT Munis report. The report could be reviewed with your supervisors and the GT committee. Discussions can involve how the money was spent or other funds needed to address the needs of the program and any other important topics. Please don't forget to document any of these discussions. And I know this is a really good time of the year to talk about money. So as you may not have all the money that you need, this is a good time to talk about, well, could there be other programs that we could maybe document a need for what we have, and then maybe use other funds either from maybe Title I or Title IV. But it has to be documented in order to use those funds. The incorporation of the gifted education into the regular school program. All right, again, there needs to be a discussion, or there could be a discussion of the GT program, and it's part of the district's overall instructional process. There could be discussions, based on data and stakeholder feedback about any modifications that are needed. And so the types of things that you could use to document this could be, lesson plans or meetings where you've met with administrators or other school personnel to talk about, how the GT program is going to be a part of the regular school program. Overall quality of instruction and program personnel credentials is another criteria of the annual program evaluation. So this is where you might review the credentials of your GT staff, as well as the credentials of other staff who work with your GT students. You might talk about certifications of those staff, hiring of additional staff, and pairing of needs of students to staff. Are there needs of the staff that, maybe you don't have personnel for? Could there be community members who could, help with that? Or are there other staff that maybe could help meet the needs of those students? This is the last part of the annual program evaluation. So this is where what I would say is you connect the dots from all of the data that you've collected, and you're analyzing it, putting it together, thinking about future directions and modifications for the next school year. And so most people's policies and procedures say that the GT coordinator is going to collect all the data, but that doesn't mean that that person can't delegate some of that responsibility or ask for assistance in order to collect some of this data that we've talked about in the annual program evaluation. And once you have collected this information, you could share it with your school staff and your district staff. So section 5.2 states, this is the section or subsection right after the criteria for the annual program evaluation. It says data collected in the annual program evaluation must be used in school and district instructional planning process. So there are different ways that this could be shared, and the policies and procedures that I've looked at, many of them say, these are Kentucky School Board Association policies. It says that the data will be shared with site-based decision-making councils and the local school board, and that they will look to see if the goals of the program have been met. So, look at your policies and procedures and see what they say. If it says that that's something that should be done, then please, follow through with that. If it doesn't say that, you still may want to collaborate with building and district administrators to plan how the data is going to be used to improve planning, for the coming school year, instructional planning. Please document those plans. It could be agendas or meeting notes. Maybe you're going to put them in your continuous school improvement plans or your continuous district improvement plans. I know from talking with colleagues in the title programs that's a good place to document if you've got a need and you want to use Title 1 or Title 4 or other of the title plans. That's a good place to document that need. And like I said before, some districts' policies do state that the annual program evaluation will be shared with the site-based decision-making councils and the local school board. All right, part 5, directions for completing the summative evaluation. So again, before you complete the summative evaluation, I'd encourage you to print that out. Look at the questions before you complete it. It's not a long form. It's basically yes and no questions. And once you start it, remember you can't save it and return back to it. So it's good to print these reports out and look at them first. All right. I think I've said all of these different things. Make sure after you've submitted the summative evaluation that you save a copy of the report in the district records. And maybe you save some for yourself, and maybe you give it also to someone in your office in case, you're assigned to a different role, or, you retire or whatever, so that they have a copy of it on file for the district. So wrapping up, can't see my clock here. It's 2:21. We're doing really good on time. You're going to get some time back today. That's exciting. So wrapping up, all of the end of year reports and materials will be sent to the GT coordinators by email and posted on the GT resources webpage within a week of the training. So by Friday of next week, all of the reports and GT data standards and this slide presentation and video will be posted on the GT resources webpage. Like I said, please click on the link in the chat. I'm going to put the link in the chat here if you need ELA credit in just a second. If you've got any questions, please contact me or use the gosoapbox.com and use that event access code 113-840-773. And again, thank you so much for attending. Give me just a second, and I'm going to put the ELA credit registration link in the chat box in case you need that. Give me just a second. I'll do that. I'm going to turn off the recording. Again, thank you so much for participating today. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions.